Today I'm going to be showing you how to color grade your videos to get that dreamy type of vibe look in your reels, in your TikTok videos, YouTube videos, all kinds of videos. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that I do shoot on a Canon R8 in the color profile of C-Log 3. I use DaVinci Resolve to edit and color grade my videos. And most importantly, this color grade that I'm about to be showing you today is based off of Cineprint16. With all that being said, let's get into the color grade, and I'm going to be showing you how to get that dreamy type look for your videos. So as you can see, I have about 4 different clips with, different settings and different scenes, lighting, just so that I could show you this color grade in different scenarios. There are a few main things that I like to do before I actually start color grading, and one of them is to make sure that I set my color management timeline and output color space to Rec. 709A. Now, I was told by a friend to do this, and honestly, it does make a difference, especially when you're editing on a Mac, like a Mac laptop and stuff like that. So I guess when you export it and you transfer it to like your iPhone and all that stuff, when I didn't have this as Rec. 709 and I transferred it from my Mac to my iPhone, it always looked like washed out, or it didn't look the same as what I edited on DaVinci. So make sure to make your timeline and output color space to Rec. 709A. Once you do that, click save, and then you can close this out. And then another thing that I like to do is, most importantly, once you go to the color grade, I use this version of Cineprint16, right? So not the first version, but the second version. You're just going to go ahead and apply that grade. And as you can see, right, like I said before, Cineprint is known to be a film emulation look. One of the most important things to always do is adjust the color space transform to your camera settings, right? For instance, because I'm using a Canon, my input color space needs to be a Canon Cinema Gamut, right? And then my input gamma needs to be C-Log 3. It already changes the image and all that stuff. Kind of looks washed out, but hopefully we can fix that, right? Obviously adjust it to your camera, whether it's a Sony, Fuji, Blackmagic, whatever camera it is. So there's 2 LUTs that you can use when you're using Cineprint, either Cineon or print film. Honestly, I always felt like the print film would give me more of a dramatic type look. I would just disable the Cineon and put on print film. So if you right click and show the compound node, they have 6 total LUTs. I always keep it to like D60. That's the one I just use majority of the time. But again, you can experiment and see what works best for you. There's no right answer or no wrong answer, but just mess around with it and see what you like. Make sure you have one or the other disabled. You can't have both, or else it'll look crazy. So always make sure that your waveform is on, right? So you can look on the bottom right here, click the drop down, and you'll be able to see the waveform option. So you click the waveform, and then if you have the settings here, you have the RGB, right? You can colorize it, which I like to do. Honestly, when I color grade, this is probably the most important piece that I look at when I actually color grade, especially when it comes to like the highlights and the darkness, just to make sure everything is pretty much level. Yeah, so once I get that set up, I always turn off the blur, I turn off the grain, and I turn off the halation for now, right? The halation I'm definitely probably gonna use again. But as of the blur, the grain, and the dust, I just think that in order to get that dreamy type look or dreamy type vibe, you don't really need the grain and all that stuff. Once I disable that, I go to my exposure, and then I make sure that I'm on the primaries section, and I try to get this to be as level as possible. For the gain, which is the top, I guess like this top bar here, I try to get it at least on the same line as that 896 or maybe just below. So I would just take the gain and pretty much bring it down right around here. And for the lift, which is going to control pretty much the bottom portion of the bottom half of this, right? You're going to go over to lift and just bring it down kind of where, almost like at the 0, right? It's probably not going to touch the 0 exactly, which is fine. It looks a little underexposed now, so you can just bring the gain back up just to like level it out. And I think that should be pretty good, right? Honestly, that doesn't look too bad right now. Cool. So now once I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and mess around with the white balance, which would control the coolness and the warmness of the actual shot. I try to match the actual setting that the shot was kind of taking place in. Obviously, it's a warm, sunny day during golden hours, so I'm gonna keep it that warm tone. Personally, I definitely like that warmer tone compared to that cooler, cold tone, but like I said before, it's all about preference and what you think looks the best. So yeah, so I'm gonna keep it, that warmish type look, not too much, maybe like right there. Or what I like to do is even put the endpoints on, right? So as you can see, it kind of makes the darks darker, right? And kind of separates the image, right? Kind of like almost like it's adding more contrast. So now that I did that, the top bar is a little higher. So again, I'll just bring it down and try to bring it back to, a good place, maybe like around here. And then let's see. And then maybe keep this down there. Cool. I think that shot looks good so far. I'm not gonna lie. Cool. So now once I got that, another thing that I usually do is halation, right? So one thing that I always notice and I didn't really like is that orange tint that the halation has. I feel like it kind of takes away from the shot. I mean, not as much for real, but like this glow here, I like to make it look like more of a natural glow, right? And the way that I do that is by right clicking the node, going to show compound, the plus blur node, and then going to blur, and then going to bring this down to around 54. Like 0.54 to 0.56 is probably ideal for me. And then if you go back, right, you can now see the difference, right? So if you look at those edges on the trees, right, it looks more blended in rather than that orange type tint or orange glow. It just more looks like a natural glow. Like on this part here of his shoulder, right, it's kind of going with the actual halation, the natural halation that's already there. So that's pretty much the shot right there. Another thing that I mess around with is the primaries, right? So if you go back to the color wheels, you can mess around with it, add more green, add more purple. Really depends on what type of feel you're trying to get. Honestly, for this shot, I'll probably go lean more towards like the purplish type look, just to give it more of that warm feel, that warm vibe, that I like. Right. And another thing that I do is when I go back to exposure for the mid detail. So, when you're thinking about like the dreamy type look, there's almost like a little blur to it, right? It's not like super sharp. So one thing I like to do is click the grade exposure. And for the mid detail, I just bring this down to like -25, maybe -30. And as you can see, it's almost like more of a blurry type look, blurry type vibe. It looks like a dream. I think this looks pretty good. Again, you can mess around with the white balance if it's too yellow or too orange or whatever, and go from there. So for my next shot, dang bro, I look stressed. So the good thing about this, right, once you color graded it, once you had it all set, all you can do is go to that next clip, right click, apply the grade, boom, and it looks pretty good. I guess to break down this scene here, obviously we're indoors, a lot of open windows and a lot of natural sunlight. The sun is hitting from the window. As you can see, like it's still giving that warm type of vibe that I'm trying to keep. One thing too about the exposure is that once I have, I guess, my gain and my lift kind of like in a good spot, that's when I start to just mess around with the gamma, which pretty much moves the scopes, but not the lift and the gain. It keeps it in place, right? So I'll just kind of mess with it here. And honestly, pretty happy with this shot, right? Another thing that you can do, like I said before, is mess around with the green and the pinks. I think obviously you don't want to go too green with this shot unless that's the vibe that you're trying to get. Personally, I probably would just kind of like leave it right in the middle, maybe favor that pink side a little bit, and then go from there. Yeah. And then, like I said before, another thing that you can do is add halation, right? And that's going to give it that dreamy type look, right? You can go back to exposure. That mid detail is still on there, and that looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with this shot. All these nodes, I really don't, these nodes here, I really don't mess around with. Also, another thing that I always noticed with the skin tone is sometimes I would have issues, right? Kind of controlling the skin tones when it comes to Cineprint, especially for my skin tone. So one thing I like to do is go to the den plus sub and go to show compound and disable the skin too, right? So I'll just do that by doing Command D on Mac, right? Disable it. And as you can see, right, this is with it enabled, right? You can see like the face and my lips are a little too much saturated. So once I disable it, it kind of just brings it back to that natural type tone, or my normal skin color. I think this shot is nice. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this next shot here is pretty much that same type vibe as that first shot. We're outdoors, the sun is hitting from like that left side. So once I apply it, let's see what it looks like. Cool. Right, I think that looks pretty good. All right, this is without the halation, right? The blues. Ooh, look at that shot. This is one of my favorite shots, I'm not gonna lie to you. The skin tones look good. Like I said, you can mess around with the white balance and the blues and all that stuff. For this type of shot, I feel like it looks better when it's blue. Almost like a little bit maybe of a warm tone, but just because like the buildings and the waters in the back, I kind of like to keep it blue. I feel like that looks nice there. Right. Cool. All right. So, honestly, like I said, I think this shot is pretty good. One thing that I can do is, this is kind of low here and you can see that, it's pretty dark. So I'll just take my gain and bring it back up a little bit. I'll leave the lift because I feel like the endpoints is keeping it pretty good, right? And overall, the shot looks good. My skin tones look clean. It looks like a natural shot, and that's kind of the vibe that I want to get, even when I'm trying to get that dreamy type look. Put that halation back on. I think it looks better. I think it just kind of adds to the shot a little bit. As you can see, like the darker areas, it does have some noise here. One thing that I love about DaVinci is their denoise and their noise reduction, right? I think it's really, really good. Obviously, you want to enable it and then head over to I guess this icon here, the motion effects, right? And then all these settings, these are basically my settings that I use for the noise reduction, right? So I keep it on 2, faster, medium. These are the settings that I keep it at, better, small. And now for the spatial threshold, I don't really go anything above like 12. I feel like anything above that is just gonna make it look like milky or very like smudged or whatever. For a shot like this, since you don't really have to use too much of the noise reduction, like as you can see here, all those noise reductions on his jacket are like gone. I don't really use it if I don't need to, right? Obviously, if I take it off, right, you can see just like a little bit, right? You can see the noise on his jacket and all that stuff. So if you want to get rid of it, all you do is enable it. Honestly, I wouldn't use a lot. I'll probably just use like 3 or 4. And honestly, all that noise is pretty much gone. All right, so going into the fourth clip, right, pick the same grade, go ahead and apply it, and then kind of work it from there. For a shot like this, I would probably use Cineon, which is going to give it more of a softer look. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my gain just a little bit, and then from there, probably bring down my gamma, right? And as you can see, it looks pretty red, right? So I'm going to go back to my skin tone here, right? Take off the skin tone too, and as you can see, it kind of just brings it back to that natural type look. You can mess around with the temperature again, right? So I'll probably make it more of a warmer tone. I'm gonna mess with the tint and maybe make it more of a kind of like the middle. One thing that I like to do to soften up the skin and stuff is I like to add another node. And I would add another node by doing Option S, right? I'm just name this skin, right? I'm gonna go ahead to this little eyedropper and then click Shift H. You can hold down the left click and select your skin. Once you do that, now you can see that pretty much like the browns and all that stuff are also selected. It's just gonna match anything that's close to your skin tone, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and mess around with this like low saturation and just try to eliminate anything that's not my specific skin tone. All right, the next thing I go to is the denoise, and I just bring it up to like 7, right? Maybe 10. I go back to my primaries, and then I would bring that mid detail to like -30. And then it looks more like that soft type of look, right? Softer vibe to it, without taking too much of the detail out, which I like. All right, so going to the next shot, it's more of a bird's eye view of the city. So I'm gonna do the same thing where I select it, right? I'm gonna do the same thing where I select it and then apply the grade. And, you know, not bad, not a bad start. The first thing that I like to do is always mess around with the grade exposure and try to get it to a good point where it's not too overexposed, too underexposed. Really trying to bring back those shadows, especially when the scene is pretty bright. Obviously, this looks very blue. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it back to like more of a warmer tone, and then I'm gonna bring my gain up maybe just a little bit. I'm gonna see if there's anything reflecting off that halation. I mean, there's a little bit, so I can have it on there. I don't think it's gonna make too much of a big, difference. Now, shots like this where I don't have, where it's not like specifically on a subject, I like to kind of boost up the contrast a little bit. So I'll probably just bring this up a little bit here. For my grade exposure, like I said, I'm just gonna make sure nothing is too overexposed. But I feel like this looks pretty good, right? I added some contrast to it. I made it a little bit warmer. I put the halation on where, I didn't really need it, but you can have it. Another cool thing that Cineprint16 has is this warmer node where if you enable it, it just automatically makes it more like a warmer tone, which I feel like this looks pretty good. Now getting into the darker scenes, right? Apply the grade. Dang. And like I said, it's very blue, right? Which doesn't look too bad. One thing that I noticed though is that mid detail right here. So sometimes that mid detail or that smudgy, milky look, it doesn't really look too good when it's like in the darker situations and stuff like that. So what I'm gonna do is just get rid of that mid detail, bring it back to 0, and really retain that sharpness that natural image has. And then what I'm gonna do is just mess around with the gain, bring it up just a little bit. Right, I don't want to take away from that, gloomy type feel. So I'm not gonna bring it up way too high. If the scene, is shot and it's dark, right? If you try to go ahead and bring up your exposure, you're probably gonna have a lot more noise as well. So just keep that in mind. Now, like I said before, it's all about what you want and what you feel. So you can do, completely like two different vibes of this. You can have, a bluish type of, Batman Dark Knight type feel of this where it's like blue and gloomy, or you can switch it up and make it more like an orangey type feel, which I like too. That looks pretty good. Another thing that you can add is those halations, right? I think this is like such a nice subtle detail that you can add too, especially when there's like when the light sources are like little light bulbs and all that stuff, because it just adds more of a glow. As you notice, right, also in the shot that there is a lot of noise since it is a darker shot. So like on my back here, you can notice the noise. You can notice the noise all on the buildings, under the bridge and all that stuff in the water. So on a shot like this, I would definitely use the denoise option, right? I would select it, again, go to my blur or go to my motion effects. And honestly, for this one, I would probably keep it at like 10, right? And as you can see, it just kind of completely gets rid of all that noise that you had. Now going into my last two favorite shots, apply the grade. And I'm gonna take off the denoise for now, but this is basically what that shot looks like. Halation is pretty strong here, right? You can either keep it on or disable it, really all preference. Since it is a darker, scene, it is gonna have that natural halation kind of already to it. So, even a shot like this looks pretty good to me. All right, so you can mess around with the temperature. Obviously, if you want a cooler look, just go on the negative side. And if you want a warmer look, go on the higher side. I'll probably keep it at like 100. And then for my tint, I'll probably keep it more on the purple side. Or actually, I'm gonna keep it more on the green side. I feel like that looks pretty good. I mean, that warm tone looks pretty good too. Yeah, I feel like that looks nice. I feel like the halation is just a little too much. I mean, again, if you're going for that dreamy look, you can have it on there because that definitely does look more like a dream. Personally, I don't think I like that, so I'll just disable it. And then like I said before, obviously it's a darker shot, so you're gonna have noise. So you're just gonna go ahead and enable the denoise. I'll probably keep it like a 8 or a 7, and then from there, you know, it kind of gets rid of that noise right there. It makes the shot just look so much sharper. Now going to the last and final shot, I'm gonna go ahead and apply the same grade, right? Cineprint16. Make some adjustments with the exposure, maybe make it a little brighter, right? Bring up the gamma. All right, bring down the lift just a little bit actually. Bring up my gamma, probably like around here. Again, you can mess around with the white balance, the temperature, go for like a cooler look, a warmer look. Mess around with the tint, favor the purple side or the green side, really up to you. I don't really mess around with the saturation too much unless the image is just really saturated where I have to kind of bring it down, right? I mean, for instance, I don't think this is too saturated, so I kind of just leave it at 50. I feel like it keeps enough color without it being too much. Like if I had it anything higher, I just feel like that's just way too much, right? Because it's already such a dark scene, I don't really think I need any contrast or additional contrast to it. So I'll just keep it at 1.3 and then go from there. I'll probably just go for more of a warmer tone. Like, yeah. Right? Again, you can add the halation too. I feel like that just adds more of that dreamy type look, dreamy vibe to it. And like I said before, if you want to, you can even add that mid detail to be like 25. And it kind of adds to that glow or that glow feel. All right, so that pretty much concludes my color grading tutorial using Cineprint16 to get that dreamy type of look for your videos, whether it's for Instagram, for YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is. That's how I do it. Obviously, there's no right or wrong way to color grade. Whatever you find works best for you is the way that you should be doing it. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of the video, what other, I guess, tutorials you would like to see. And yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.